Back with this week's Living the Shift. Very important, very basic question, and it is really, it's very complex, but yet very basic in itself to begin with. Many people ask me about, well, what's going on, and everybody comes at it from a different angle. And so what's really important right now, we are all awakening at a different pace. Every single one of us has a very individual path to our enlightenment, to whatever we want to call our next version of evolution. And it's sort of coming around full circle and remembering our divinity, remembering who we are. And some people wake up like that. Some people have somebody do it, help them do it, per like soul agreements, whatever. Some people, have a more gradual experience. And it's just, like I said, very individual for every person. So what happens is as that starts happening for someone, the spiritual awakening on who we are, on remembering all of these other amazing things about our world, our universe, our connectedness, our divinity, all of that stuff, taking back our power and our empowerment. That's really essentially what it is. The key is to remember how to know, not to think, but to know. Because we have so much coming in. So what will happen is as you start to awaken, as you progress actively on your spiritual journey, all of a sudden you're going to notice things that were right in front of your face. All of a sudden you will notice things that you hadn't noticed before. And then all of a sudden you will get overwhelmed many times because of the amount of information, because so many are awakening, so much is going on at so many different levels of awareness in this world. So that, and take it from me, I know, because I went through that 3 years ago, just 3 years ago, and it feels like, decades ago. I mean, yes, most of my life was in preparation for it. Now in retrospect, I look back and realize that most of it was right under my nose, but that happens more times than it doesn't. So the key is this: as we awaken, and depending on what our individual path is, depending on what we have chosen from that higher level of consciousness to awaken, during the time of awakening, we will very likely get to a point where there's so much information under our noses, so much information around us, that we might sort of short out and get overwhelmed. And that's what I get a lot of times, is people be like, well, have you seen this? And what do you think about channelings? And what do you think about this? And have you read this book? And have you seen this website? Have you seen this webcast? Have you read this? Have you talked to this person? Blah, 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 blah. Yada, yada, yada. And I usually say, more times than not, 9 times out of 10 these days, I say no. Or I've heard of them, or yes, I've seen it, I've not ever really paid attention to it. And part of that is this. The progression is this. The first step tends to be, once we get over the shock of what's going on, if we are completely sort of unaware about awakening and stuff, once we get over that shock, then we become voracious, and voracious in wanting to know and remember and explore whatever it is that really pulls your interest, that has to do with your awakening. I know I did. For like 18 months, I was voracious. I wanted to learn everything. And then what happens is, in doing that, you attract more and more. Once you're awakened, you actually awaken, also improve your methods of manifesting. So when you say, okay, yes, more, guess what? More, just keeps on flowing in. And then at some point you sort of go like, wow, I'm a little bit overwhelmed. So what's key to that? The key is starting at the basics. Because here's the thing, and this is what I always tell people, and I get the eyes rolling, I get all that kind of stuff, when I go into this discussion many times, or just the sigh, and they're like, yeah, I know, but I can't do this. The key is to get into some practice to quiet the mind. It's as simple as that, and I'll tell you why. Because when we can do that, we can bypass the ego. The ego is what has sort of gotten in the way of, well, no, it's not gotten in the way. It has done a fantastic job of ruling our consciousness at the 3D earth level, and putting in pieces to allow us to forget all of the awesome stuff that we are because of all the experiences that we've wanted to do at this density and at this level of consciousness. And that's all assimilating now. Everything is assimilating back. We're sort of circling back around. And in the process of doing that, everything's becoming simplified. Everything is, we're taking the walls down and we're remembering. And so the ego's getting a little panicked. And sometimes we'll put up a really big fight, many times. And actually, then it becomes sort of passive aggressive many times. Even when it says, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to pretend I'm just going to stand by and watch, and then I'll just insert a couple little things to, trip you up along the way. Yeah, any kind of emotion that is resistant, and that would be like fear, anxieties, regrets, rejections, resentments, anger, guilt, doubt, sadness, pain, sorrow, that kind of stuff. That's all from the ego, because my understanding is we're going back to this level of purity and connectedness, and the level of purity and connectedness is at that level of unconditional love. Unconditional, no matter what. And when we get to that level, guess what? Unconditional means it matters not what you have done. It matters not what your experiences were. They were all part of what we chose to have as the experience. There is no judgment. There is no criticism. It is all from the ego. And when we can bypass that and we can accept everything in love and unconditional love, then guess what happens? Is then we raise our vibration. We raise our consciousness. And we change our world. We change our level of existence here completely. Now, regardless of what you are listening to, whether you are reading or understand things like the Hopi prophecy, the Mayan prophecy, the Casey prophecies, the Nostradamus prophecies, and then you have all the belief systems that have all these, Armageddons and all this kind of stuff. Armageddon, by the way, has a meaning that has to do with knowing and learning and remembering the word Armageddon in its definition and origin. So, the key, again, I'm going to come back to the beginning. Quiet the mind. The mind is what the ego chatter is all about. And if we can quiet that, then we can tune in to our higher self, to the higher levels of consciousness, to the expanded universe. And when we do that, we get more pure answers, more pure understandings. Now, many things are coming up in this planet chaotically at all levels, and there's all this information out there from all different aspects, all different belief systems. And the key is to learn discernment. The key is to learn how to listen to our higher selves and say, is this truth for me? And I'll tell you why, because not everybody's truth is different. As what we chose to pretend we were individual souls, we have chosen, in many cases, several hundred lifetimes. And so our process of experiencing, it was all planned out. This process of what we wanted to experience, to get totally involved and totally, roll up our sleeves and get entrenched in this existence, and then, process all those lessons, complete them, process them, and then release them, and then come back to our oneness and our divinity, and remember that, well, we never separated to begin with, but individual souls. So if we've had several hundred lifetimes, we've processed information very, very individually, and there is no one truth. The only truth that I understand that is universal and that is the only absolute in the universe, and that is unconditional love. So everything else are perspectives. Everything else is perspectives. And, even the laws of the universe, we can change. If we agree to, we can change it. If we release ourselves from the obligation to abide by them, we can change that. It's a lot of information to process. And so what happens is this. My truth and your truth are going to be very, very different because of where we've been and the individual lives that we have lived and what we have chosen to experience and learn and process. And the method and the path of us getting all the way back to where we started and that true divinity and enlightenment, that is going to be individual for every one of us. So there is going to be no one truth no path of truth that is going to get us to enlightenment for everybody. There might be groups of people that might follow a general path, but it's very individual. It's very individual what awakens us. It's very individual what we are choosing to do to fulfill our soul's highest purpose. And then once we attain that, then get to that level of enlightenment to come back to that oneness so that we can go on to the next existence, or what I call Earth 2.0. So the key, again, is to come back to this. Is it my truth? Is it truth for me? The information that you read, the information that you hear, the information that you are processing, is it truth for me? And the key is this, to shut down the ego when you ask that question. That's all you need to do, is to have a connection to the higher self that will give you an answer out of love and peace and serenity instead of any resistant emotion. If you ever get an answer, if you ask yourself an answer and you get this like bark back at you, or this like, oh my God, no, that's the ego. That's not the higher self. The higher self will always be very calm and peaceful and clear and serene. And the feeling of the answer will come from the heart, not from the head. The heart. The heart is the doorway to the soul, and the soul is where the higher levels of consciousness is. So the first steps are meditation, clearing your mind, doing some sort of meditation, and it doesn't have to be, sitting in lotus on a mountaintop, though that's very, very cool. I will say myself. But things like just taking 5 or 10 minutes in the morning to clear yourself, to connect with your body, to connect with your higher self, to clear the mind, and to live in your heart, and to breathe from your heart, and feel your existence emanating from your heart. And that will actually be your first step. And it doesn't take longer than 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be in the morning. It can be at lunch, it can be at night, you can be all three. And then you can build it up. You can do more. You can go for a walk in nature. I love sitting in nature. It is the best meditative time that I can get. And doing things like running or working out, sometimes that'll quiet the mind afterwards. When you do yoga is phenomenal, because at the end you always do shavasana, which is the corpse pose, and after you've been so in your body, you are so free and released. That was when I started getting stuff that came in well before I even understood what I was getting in, before I was really formally meditating. So lots of things to process, lots of ways to look at it, but this is very key. This is so basic. This is living the shift, because this is how we navigate through all of this information, all of this chaos that's going on around us, in the physical, in the governmental, in the institutional, in the political. There's so many levels, and we can do that if we have that connection, that clear connection with our higher selves. We can simply say, is this my truth? Is this for my highest? Is this for my highest and best good? Mine. Not everybody's, mine, because at the end of the day, that's who we are concerned with, getting back to that stage of enlightenment, because all of us are working towards the same place. And when we all get there, it's phenomenal for all of us. So on that, I'm going to let you go. We'll talk to you next week. This is Angela with Living the Shift.